Hello there and welcome. Those of you who are out there, my name is Barb Van Hoy, and I am a policy analyst with the City of Colorado Springs Community Development Division. And it's my honor to welcome you to the first of 4 public meetings about our 2022 Annual Action Plan. The city's Community Development Division manages federal block grant funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, and every year we seek as much community involvement as possible from residents, advocates, and stakeholders to help make sure that the plans we put together best meet the needs of our community. And I am excited to introduce our main speaker today, who is going to explain all of that to us, and that is Catherine Duarte. Catherine is a senior policy analyst with the Community Development Division, and she will take you through most of our meeting today. Catherine, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Hope everyone can hear me. I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. I know that everyone has a lot on their plate these days. And I also want to thank the staff with us at Community Development, Barb Van Hoy, who just introduced us as our newest member on the team. We also have a few other folks on the call who are here to help answer questions, help manage the meeting, and just help things run really smoothly. And you'll see their names here. We have Andy Phelps, our homelessness prevention and response coordinator, Naomi Clark, our project CDBG and ESG project manager, and Christy Miller, our finance analyst, here with us on the team. So thank you, everyone. Just a few housekeeping items about how to participate. I know these live meetings are still a little strange. We are kind of dipped our toe back into the in-person meetings, but now we, in the best interest of protecting some of our most vulnerable in the community, we are back to virtual meetings. So just a little reminder on how to participate in these live events. For those of you who are joining on your desktop or laptop, you are muted, unfortunately, but you can use the Q&A box the whole time. We'll have a pretty substantial amount of time the last half of the meeting just to go over questions, your comments, any reactions that you have to some of the content that we're going through. But feel free to just use that Q&A button throughout the whole presentation. And if something is topical to what we're talking about on the screen, we'll try to answer it live. We will save all the questions that we get and prepare an FAQ for folks at the end. And also this will be recorded. We will have a recording of this presentation to put on the website. So all of these slides and materials you can find on our website. It usually takes a couple days to get the content up. And of course, if you have any other follow-up questions that don't come to you while this meeting is in session, you can always email or call us at the info here. So for those of you who want to slow things down and just want to get subtitles or closed captioning, you can click on the little gear button on the bottom corner of your screen and turn on the closed captionings. There's an option in the variety of languages. So feel free to use that. And for those of you on your phone, when we get to the kind of Q&A part of the presentation, you can unmute yourselves using by dialing *6, and feel free to ask questions since it is a little harder for you guys to type your questions in. So with that, feel free to, again, please use that Q&A box if you have any questions along the way. So today's goals is just to give the community a little bit of context behind our work. I know a lot of people who are joining us today are probably really familiar with the work that we do, or probably subrecipients and partners in our work. So we do have some pretty basic information available on our website. If you want to know a little bit more about what action plans are, consolidated plans are, we have some pretty foundational stuff on our website, coloradosprings.gov/community development. But today will be a little bit about what tools, resources, partnerships we take advantage of to accomplish our goals. We are excited to tell you how we spend the grant money and deploy it into the community. We are really excited to tell you what we plan to accomplish in the next year. But most of all, those plans aren't set in stone. That's what this series of meetings is about. We want to give you that context and then also get a chance to have you react and have a dialogue on what you and your community are experiencing when it comes to homelessness. And we want to make sure that this plan can address that. While this plan is very much, dictated by HUD, what the format is and things like that, we do have quite a bit of leeway, and we use our public feedback in a variety of ways, not just with HUD funds. So we welcome any and all input. And then of course we have, to wrap up, we want to let you know how to follow the progress of the plan and how to access funds in the coming year. So expected resources. The whole point of this planning process is to estimate what our budget is and talk about where that money is going. So our expected resources for the next program year averages out at about a little over 6 million. And this comes from an estimate of, we take last year's allocation from HUD, and we're expecting a slight increase. So we're planning for a 10% increase. So we don't think we'll get that, but it is easier to plan with a slightly higher budget in mind versus a lower budget, and this is for city budgeting purposes. But basically, this pie chart that you're looking at shows 4 different income sources, and 3 come from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and the 4th comes from program income. So I'm going to talk a little bit about these sections. So the City of Colorado Springs Community Development Division receives grant funding from HUD every year from 3 signature programs: CDBG, which is Community Development Block Grant Program, HOME, which is short for Home Investment Partnerships, and the Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG. The program income is income that we receive from past loans on multifamily properties and other affordable housing projects. And given the state of the market these days, we have been seeing a lot of loan payoffs. So this program income projection is a little higher than it has been in the last few years. We're not going to really focus on that during these meetings. We're really talking about the federal entitlement grants. So this is an across the board projection. If we receive less, then basically the plan is to just do a pro rata increase or decrease. So we're looking at about $3.5 million in the CDBG program, which is our largest program, and it's also our most flexible program. And that covers things like public services, affordable housing, public facilities and infrastructure, and we'll get to the details behind that. HOME is really for new construction, affordable housing planning projects, tenant-based rental assistance. ESG, though, is really what we're talking about today, because that is our only source, that's our only fund that's specifically dedicated to homelessness. It's also our smallest. It's a very small annual entitlement. Its main purpose is to serve those experiencing homelessness and those at risk of homelessness. This year, we're estimating just shy of 300,000, about 288,000 in ESG funds. And since this is a very small fund, we have to be very strategic with it, and we want to make sure that we complement how we deploy these funds with regional homelessness efforts. And that's why it makes, meetings like this extra important, because we want to know what other funders and what nonprofits are seeing from their funders. We want to make sure that this fits in a rational way, I guess. So the ESG program supports 5 very particular projects: emergency shelter, homelessness prevention, HMIS, which is a database, information systems, rapid rehousing, and street outreach. The CDBG program supports homelessness in different ways. We, through our kind of 5-year planning framework, our CDBG program covers 5 different activities: infrastructure and facilities, public services, which is support to nonprofits, economic development, and affordable housing through rehab and preservation. And it also covers admin. All 9 of us here in CDD were all funded through grants. So this helps, this money helps us administer these programs and leverage as much other public and private funds as possible. So the public services and infrastructure components are really flexible tools. Infrastructure and facilities is exactly as it sounds. It helps us cover and support capital improvement projects that can support folks, those at risk of homelessness and those experiencing homelessness. And of course, public services being so broad, to support nonprofits, we tend to use that to complement the ESG program by supporting a lot of nonprofits that help people experiencing homelessness. So together, and then one last component with the home program, we also use these funds to support those experiencing homelessness, and that is to end it for them by completing permanent supportive housing or rental assistance to place them in safe, stable, affordable housing. Home is a very powerful source of funding because it helps finance long-term affordable housing, and this is something that we're very aware of, and we also have a whole housing blueprint for this. So I strongly suggest you check out our affordable housing plan, Home COS, at the link below. And that really kind of shares our strategy behind our affordable housing production strategy, where we prioritize folks making less than $30,000 a year because their ability to afford market rate housing makes it especially important that we support these projects first and foremost. So you may wonder how these funds are distributed. We don't, you can't, a person can't go up to the city and ask for funds. We use local nonprofits and public agencies, private developers to make these things, to make these projects happen. So for subrecipients or nonprofits who provide services or short-term capital projects, we go through a competitive application every year. And these funds do come with lots of strings attached, as you might imagine. So we do have some technical assistance here at the city that kind of prep our local nonprofits to receive these funds. So if you have any questions about how that process works, we've got Naomi on the call today, and I've also included her email here. So if you have any questions about when the application process will start, how long it lasts, what you need, so on and so forth, you can email her. And we also work with developers to build the housing construction that I referenced earlier. That's on a rolling basis. We recognize that these projects take, sometimes 3, 4, 5 years to come to fruition. And we go through a strong underwriting process for those folks. You need to have a very strong financial outlook, strong development team, and you have to promise long-term affordability for the housing that you propose, minimum of 20 years once home funds are involved. So of course, the unifying aspect of these funds is that they have to directly benefit low-income populations. And of course, in today's meeting, we're really talking about those experiencing homelessness. So before we have a conversation about what we want to do for 2022, I kind of wanted to share where we're going in 2021. Technically, we're still in the middle of the 2021 program year here in community development. So just wanted to give you a snapshot of how we awarded those funds that I just went through. So ESG, that's the program that that serves those experiencing homelessness. These are the 4 categories. The pie chart on your left, you're looking at how those funds were awarded out of a total pot of $242,000. You'll see that over a third went to emergency shelter. A little over a quarter, 27% went to street outreach, 21% went to rapid rehousing, and 15% to HMIS, which is the database management software that I was discussing. So a lot of how these awards shake out depend on how the project applications score. And we also have limits on how much we can spend on emergency shelter and street outreach. So those are 2 factors that kind of explain the how this pie chart kind of lays itself out. A lot of it is just also due to the local capacity. So how many nonprofits in the community, meet the requirements of ESG. And then to the right, the pie chart on your right shows how these are very broad categories of how the awards of the 2021 CDBG Public Services competitive process shook out. In very general terms, I kind of lumped them into 4 different categories. 3 of them are organizations that serve families and individuals experiencing homelessness. And then the 4th, which is 32%, the light pink, just about a third of these awards went to nonprofits that kind of, serve other folks and are not necessarily homeless serving organizations. But for those who did, you'll notice that the majority of them, 42% of them, of these awards went to family supports for families experiencing homelessness. We're seeing just a great uptick in the need for supportive services for families either at risk of or experiencing homelessness. We're also supporting some services for veterans that a lot of other sources like the VA do not cover. We also cover some shelter spillover. As I mentioned, we do have some caps that we have to observe from ESG. So this is all of this is to give you a little bit of context into how we award the funds and where they go. And again, to talk about how we try to complement these funds, our colleague Andy Phelps is going to talk about what his team of volunteers and other folks in the nonprofit community and here at the city, other departments at the city, what they've achieved in the last year, and then we'll come back for questions.
Yeah, thank you. So again, my name is Andy Phelps. I am the Homelessness Prevention and Response Coordinator for the city. I'm going to be talking about some things that are a little bit outside of the federal grant money that we disperse every year and talk about some of the programs that I helped to develop in the last year and a half. So first, I wanted to talk about the Colorado Springs Fire Department's Homeless Outreach Program. This program does homeless outreach in the downtown area. It has 2 teams of 2. Each team has a mental health practitioner or counselor, as well as an EMT. And they focus their outreach on what we call high needs utilizers in the downtown area. So high needs utilizers are people experiencing homelessness that have 5 or more arrests within 1 quarter. And when I say arrests, that really means ticket. So the way this came about is we were getting quite a few complaints from downtown business owners about some behavior downtown. And I recommended doing a pilot to increase strategic, professional, targeted outreach downtown instead of just adding more police downtown, because I believed that the pilot would show that getting people connected to services is actually the best way to reduce interactions with the police. So after 1 year of data collection, we were able to show that there was a substantial decrease in police interactions with those that we targeted with the outreach team. So this line graph here just kind of shows the visual of just how drastic the decrease was in police interactions. So this is looking at one of the cohorts that we looked at data-wise, and it was 20 individuals. They had 156 tickets in the year prior to engaging with the fire department homeless outreach program, and only 45 tickets in the year after engaging with the homeless outreach program. So that's an over 70% decrease in police interaction. So I think this pilot has been very successful, and I'm really hoping to see this program grow in the future. So second, I wanted to talk about a program I helped start called Work COS. So this is a homeless work program being run by the city in cooperation with some of our nonprofits like Springs Rescue Mission, Salvation Army, and Catholic Charities. So this program provides temporary city employment for folks experiencing homelessness. And what they're doing is working with our city streets division, which is a part of our public works department, and doing median maintenance cleanups throughout the city. And these are good jobs. They're in the $15 an hour range. But more than that, these jobs are a foot in the door to getting full-time city employment. And this visual is already out of date. It's now 3 of the people that have gone through this program have now been hired as full-time employees at the city, and we've gotten 3 individuals housed. And also year 1 success, we also list all of the roadways and medians that they did clean up. But you know, I am excited about the trash getting cleaned up, obviously, but what I'm more excited about is we got people into housing and we got them into full-time employment. And I hope to see that program grow in the future. It's been very successful. We did double that program in size last year. The first year, it was funded with Pikes Peak Regional Transportation Authority funding. And because it was so successful, the mayor and city leadership did agree to fund a second team out of the city's general fund. Okay, and also another program I'm very proud of, veteran homelessness is something that's near and dear to my heart, as I used to do homeless outreach for Rocky Mountain Human Services here in town. But so we started what's called the Pikes Peak Veteran Housing Fund, and this fund exists to get homeless veterans into housing. It's got a very clear purpose, but what we did is we developed the policy and procedures, and then I worked with the mayor to do a fundraiser last year, and we raised $100,000 in that one fundraiser, and it's been successful. We've housed over 15 veterans and their families since this fund did start, and I'm hoping to see that grow even more in the future. You know, last year was a weird year. It was difficult to get veterans into housing because of the pandemic. I am expecting to see the housing placements increase moving forward. And I think we'll be doing another fundraiser for this fund here in the next few months. And last but not least, one of the big things that I and the city have been very busy with in the last year and a half is developing and helping to operate a COVID-19 isolation shelter for people experiencing homelessness. So back in March 2020, when all of the COVID stuff started kicking off, obviously we were worried about what was going to happen to our homeless population. So we started collaborating with the hospitals, health department, and our continuum of care to develop and then stand up a COVID-19 shelter. The first year that shelter was run out of the city auditorium, and in that time we sheltered over 282 individuals. Now the shelter is operated by ComCore at a facility called City Hope Shelter that's on North Nevada. So we have ComCore and a couple of other contractors running that shelter now. And this again is funded primarily with CARES Act funding.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate it.
Problem.
So with that in mind, getting a sense of how our funds work, the timeline that we have to spend our annual entitlements, and how we work with other organizations. We do have some baseline goals that we wanted to run by the public and also use that as a kind of jump off point for discussion. So this year we tried to think of 3 concrete things that we can do with a combination of our funds and other kind of local efforts, using folks in other departments and things like that to really move the needle. So some of the assumptions and values and experience that we've kind of collected to come up with these goals, were implicit, but I wanted to make it explicit here in this meeting because we do hear a lot about, why do we have to be so reactive? Can we invest in prevention? Can we focus on housing? I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the assumptions that we work with behind this. And one, we know that housing ends homelessness, and we will have a very robust discussion this coming Saturday at the public hearing around affordable housing. So in our minds, we share the goal that our colleagues at the Pikes Peak Continuum of Care have, that we strive to make homelessness brief, rare, and non-recurring. And we also want to really focus on how to create better collaboration in the region. And one key to that is high data quality. We don't know if we're making progress unless we're measuring things correctly and accurately and consistently. And lastly, with all of these kind of different funding pieces, the three funds that we manage at the city and all of the different funding sources throughout the region, whether they're philanthropic, religious, just private donations, or other grant sources, other public grant sources, we want to make sure that we're strategic with the funds that we do have and that we, obviously remain in compliance and get the funds where they need to be, and make sure that they make the impact that they should. And of course, implicit in all of these is that we support our partners' plans, and to the best of our ability, we try to complement that. So with all that said, our 3 main goals this year is to collaborate with external stakeholders to really focus on the issue of family homelessness and use some other funds at our disposal, such as the American Rescue Plan Act funds through the home program to support family shelter and permanent supportive housing for families. Second, invest in street outreach. You heard from Andy how doing some targeted street outreach by offering employment and other social services can really help move people to not just stable employment, but stable housing, permanent housing. So we'd like to see that program grow. Lastly, we want to increase community participation in HMIS, homelessness management information systems, to make sure that there is truly no wrong door for a person in need to walk through, and that we are tracking local progress in reducing homelessness and making sure that we're not putting people through, making them jump through more hoops than they really need to. And then 4 is your input here. We want to hear from you. We've got a couple of months to put this plan together, and then another couple of months for it to go through all of the review processes. And I want to make sure that we're capturing what our partners are thinking. So these are just a few prompts, to let people kind of digest what they've heard. If there's anything, this is kind of a chance for any and all questions to come out. We want to hear what you're seeing and experiencing. I imagine there's a lot of service providers who are watching this live or who will watch this on our website later. For anybody who's experiencing homelessness or have had experience with homelessness, what's working for you? What didn't work? Equity is a major goal of the Community Development Division. We want to make sure that there is equity in service and equity in outcomes. We don't want any sort of personal characteristic to impede anyone's chance at getting out of homelessness and finding a home. And then, did the goals that we talked about make sense to you? So I will just turn it over. I'll just remind everybody, if you're on your phone, you can press *6 to just chime in. And if you're online, you can use the Q&A. So,
Hey, Catherine.
Yeah.
Just a reminder for those who have called in who don't see the slides, would you read the questions? I know you mentioned a couple of them.
Yes, sorry. I was kind of bringing them into conversation. So we have essentially 6 prompts. What are you seeing and experiencing? How can we make equitable outcomes a reality? Do our annual goals make sense to you? What are you seeing that's working? What's not working? And any thoughts, questions, comments, or concerns? And also on the slide, I have an asterisk on the equitable outcomes. There's been quite a bit of research, both nationally, statewide, and locally, but I do not have the access to the local data. But the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless put out a brief last year called Race, Ethnicity, and Homelessness. And they looked at data from the state's 3 continuums of care. And it's just showing, really very obvious disparities in outcomes for people by race and ethnicities, particularly Black and Indigenous individuals. This is not acceptable, and we want to come together as a community and figure out what we can do on the service end. Do anything in our power to make sure that equity is a priority for all of our partners.
Hey, Catherine, this is Naomi. I'm just looking in our Q&A on here, and it looks like we had a few questions. So do you want to start with maybe a few of these Q&A questions that we had?
That'd be great.
Okay. Well, the first one is, will this recording be posted once it is finished? And if yes, where can folks find it later?
Sorry, I'm going to rely on Barb to tell us where that will end up. I do believe this is being recorded. Barb, do you want to chime in and let us know where?
Yeah, I wasn't perfectly clear on the actual question. Is the question about the where information about this process
The presentation itself. So they're
Oh.
wanting to know where will the presentation be available and is it recorded?
Yes, so yes to both of those. A little earlier, I did post in the chat where it says you can follow the process here, and that's kind of where we're going to post everything about the annual action plan process. If you're not having access to see that link or click on it, it's basically, you can see it from the Community Development Division's homepage on the city's website. So it's coloradosprings.gov/community development. And there's a few things posted there. And from there, you'll be able to find them. Oh, and I should also say that we do have a newsletter that goes out, and we'll also be posting links and reminding folks along with that process. And I will post a link in the chat for how to subscribe to that.
Thank you, Barb. We had another question that was specific to something that was mentioned earlier about 15 families that have been housed. The question was, where are these families being housed with an affordable housing shortage going on in Colorado Springs?
Right, I'll take that one because I think that's referring to the Pikes Peak Veteran Housing Fund. So what I would say to that is that the Pikes Peak Veteran Housing Fund is accessed by case managers throughout our community. That being said, you're correct. We do have an affordable housing shortage going on in our community, but we have some amazing, talented case managers in our community that are still able to get people housed. But yeah, it is difficult. We have good case managers, and we have some folks at some of our nonprofits that build relationships with landlords. So roundabout way of saying they're housed all over the community.
There is a second question that I do believe is also kind of along the lines of homelessness. It asked about where are we getting our data sources and how are we determining best practices?
That's a really good question. So I'm going to roll through these. That person can, we have quite a few, we referenced quite a few sources here. So if I'm going to just kind of start from the top. Obviously, this is our own award data. This is according to CSPD, correct, Andy?
That's correct. That's data from their analysts. And with Work COS, we got data from Public Works Department at the city.
Yes.
And the COVID-19 shelter, that's data that I collected throughout the year.
But in terms of, best practices, we work with all of our homelessness service partners. We have access to research going on through the National Alliance to End Homelessness. HUD puts out what's called P&D. I forget what the acronym is, but it's basically housing and community development research with other researchers. We follow best practices data through the National Low-Income Housing Coalition. Best practices like housing first. There's quite a bit of literature on what the impacts of housing first do for children, for health outcomes, for lifetime earnings outcomes, for generational wealth outcomes. So we try to, among all of us and through our partners, stay up to date on best practices from who we consider leaders in the field, like National Alliance to End Homelessness and others. We also, other data sources, I mentioned here that high data quality is key to know what's going on. Our local continuum of care, which is run by Community Health Partnership, they manage the HMIS kind of data wrangling for all of our providers, and they help us look at outcome data for not just the people who receive our grant funding, but everyone who does this work in the community. We see, you know, where people are kind of lingering in either shelter or, you know, not so permanent housing situations, and who is exited to permanent housing. So we look at, this is kind of a long-winded way of saying we look at national best practices, and we also look very closely at our local outcome data to see what programs are working and what doesn't work so well. So to the person who asked that question, I hope that answered it, and if not, let us know.
We had one more, it's more of a comment, and it was centered around, I think there was a slide where you guys talked about diversity and equity on here. And the comment was, thank you for the emphasis on equity. It is so important. It seems that we would need to disaggregate the data by race, ethnicity, disability, gender, etc., to see where particular inequities or disparities exist so that we can focus on remediating them. So not really a question, just kind of a general comment about that particular slide. Those are all the questions that I have so far for the Q&A, if we want to give folks over the phone the opportunity perhaps to ask some questions. And if you're over the phone, you can unmute yourself or go ahead and speak out.
And I believe the way to do that if you're on the phone is by pressing *6.
Thank you, Barb.
Sure.
Well, just in case people have any questions that they're typing in or waiting to unmute, I just wanted to make sure that people have an idea of how we're moving forward. We're spending, like I said, a couple months putting this together, listening to people. We've been having kind of one-on-one consultations with some folks. We're having, you know, virtual meetings like this one. If you have something that you know, that your organization or your community is going through that you'd like to talk about with us, you know, let us know. We can have a chat. We will post the draft of the 2022 annual action plan sometime in December. I believe it'll fall on a Monday, December 13th. And that will be available for 30 days. We'll have a meeting in early January to just kind of go over it with folks and see if there are any questions about it. It'll go to council that same month and up for approval in February. At some point, we'll submit to HUD. And then, of course, the interesting part is when the money is available early next spring, we're going to open the grant application for ESG and CDBG Public Services. And then the program year starts. I mean, it's not very interesting to hear a different program year start, but how this matters to you, especially for those of you potential applicants, is that this is when you know, you can start. This is when the funds that you apply for would start would be reimbursed. So you apply in the spring, you hear back in, you know, May or so, and get a contract signed in the summer. You can have funds, eligible activities be reimbursed going back to April 1. And of course, if you think of questions later, it's completely fine. Just call or email us if you have any comments about what you heard, or just any questions. Oh, I see.
We had one more come in.
Yes.
Actually, looks like two more just popped in here. Give me just a moment. So I can pull these up. So the last question that came in said, this is all commendable. I heard Andy say that people are being placed, but the reality of FMR constraints coupled with the disincentives for voucher taking for landlords also coupled with legal/financial hurdles that exist for people who are identified for housing, is creating a real pain point. Is there any possibility of greater funding for housing navigation or a flex fund like what we have for vets to incentivize landlords to participate in accepting vouchers or reducing their rents to FMR, which stands for fair market rent for those of you over the phone?
This is great. Thank you. That's a huge issue. Sorry, go ahead, Andy. I'll let you.
Well, I was going to ask if anyone wanted to talk about Pikes Peak PPCHP. They have a fund, correct, that is trying to replicate in a way what the Pikes Peak Veteran Housing Fund is doing, but for all people, not just vets. Am I correct on that?
That's right. So our CARES Act funds, we created a landlord incentive fund. That was one of the waivers that HUD allowed with these CARES Act funds, and we awarded some of that to CHP. The problem with those funds is that they have to be tied to an ESG program. So only those organizations who are running an ESG eligible homelessness prevention or rapid rehousing program can take advantage of that. That's also really limiting in its scope, and I really appreciate this comment expressing the need for a more flexible fund. You know, the reality is the fund that Andy was talking about, you know, when there are few parameters and it's as flexible as possible, it really works well. You know, we're using our ESG CARES Act funds to the best of our ability for that, but you know, maybe there is a way, you know, there's definitely a need, but maybe we can work with some of our partners and cobble together, you know, another type of fund that you know, maybe one with CDBG, but that's something that we would have to that we would definitely have to research and really understand the scope of the need. But yes, landlord participation is a big hurdle right now with the housing market the way it is. And for the person who asked that question, or for, you know, anyone else who has experience in that, feel free to send us an email and let us know exactly what kinds of obstacles you're seeing. We are in conversation with CHP. They have someone they're working on landlord outreach, and we do get some pretty granular data on reasons that or obstacles that that individuals from coordinated entry are going through. You know, reasons why they're not getting into an apartment, or all the hoops that they had to jump through to get into one. So we're getting some pretty granular data on what's keeping folks, but I do understand that sometimes a landlord just not wanting to participate is does happen. So I think the more we understand how often that's happening, why it's happening, then we can build a solution around that. I would love for this person to kind of keep the conversation going and send us an email. But we will definitely take this feedback.
Coupled with that particular question, is there funding for application fees? Most people are applying at least a half dozen places before finding even one that will accept them.
Yes, so the Pikes Peak Veteran Housing Fund does provide money for application fees. And I think that, you know, just to reiterate, flex funds are very useful in a community. Funds that are funded with federal funding, they're a little bit more difficult to access. So yeah, I love your idea. I think we should talk about that internally.
Those are all the questions that we had in the Q&A box, and give folks over the phone an opportunity if they want to ask a question direct.
I will say to that last question, for folks, for ESG subrecipients, If you get ESG funds for either homelessness prevention or rapid rehousing, or even, shelter, if you're, trying to connect people into housing and you're, you have a housing navigator position funded through your shelter operations, whatever. Application fees are eligible under kind of that case management. It's considered an eligible fee to get somebody into housing. But again, that's through ESG. I think we do need to do a little more digging into how to build a housing navigation or housing stability program using CDBG funds to cover that. But again, if you are a homelessness service provider, that fee is already an eligible expense for you.
Perfect. Thank you, Catherine. That's all we had for the Q&A box right now. Any questions from our folks over the phone?
Well, if that's the case, we'll leave the door open for questions. Again, call or email us. Again, that draft will go out in mid-December. We're still doing kind of one-on-ones, and we have 3 more meetings coming up, topic-based. We have economic development coming tomorrow, neighborhood facility infrastructure and facilities on Thursday night, and affordable housing on Saturday morning. So you don't have to attend all of them. If you have comments or questions on any of those topics, you can contact us.
And I just want to give an extra plug for sending any ideas or thoughts. We very carefully consider all of the input that we get. It does really make a difference. And so use that email address or phone number, which I posted in the chat. The email address is communitydevelopment@coloradosprings.gov, G-O-V, and the phone number is 719-385-5912.
Great. Well, if that's all the questions that we have, we'll end a little early, and we'll post this in the next couple days. And we look forward to hearing from you all soon. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.